Real quick before we go on, we were talking about earlier about Colin's writing like Snake and stuff. I just wanted to say before I lose this train of thought, there are so much little nuances in his writing, like little Easter eggs and stuff that people don't even realize. Kind of like Illuminati level, like this last year he had the Star 93 lick in there.
Yep.
And then and then Daniel Gutierrez pointed this out to me that there was one part in On the Waterfront where you guys played this lick, and then later on it was like the exact same lick, but in like triplet form. But it was like, and it's like, I would have never caught that unless he pointed out just so many little nuances. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that sort of speaks to a little bit of the why there's so much enthusiasm around Boston, because all of the ways that the design is appealing, that the playing is appealing, that even just the attitude and the sort of aura that you guys give off. I think a lot of people like that version of things, right? Where it feels very like clean is really important, right? And being able to overcome a lot of difficulty as far as like I'm going to accept the challenge of being able to play this stuff that might feel a little bit like superhuman.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
As far as being given that challenge, and being able to handle it with this like real business like attitude. It was
like my favorite is everybody plays threes. Here, let's play some fours. Yeah.
And I think the way that you guys like the whole package, when you put it all together, it's very like a lot of people are like, it's validate. This is what it is. It's validating for them because they feel like everything they think, like the audience members, they think is important about the activity, valuable about the activity, is being displayed by you guys.
The difficulty level, yeah.
And I don't know if that registers at all with you guys, but as fans, right, and as being people who sort of create content and like see all the chatter and talk to people in the lot and have had the fortune to be in a bunch of lots these last couple of seasons, that's tangible, that's real. A lot of lines are popular for different reasons, like they all have their sort of unique identity in that way.
And I like it's still a thing. A lot of people said that that was going away where all the lines sound the same. I don't think so. Everyone still has their distinct
really
sound.
Really strong identity.
Yeah.
Did that register with you guys at all? Like, do you have any kind of sort of take on that?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. That's a really good point. I never really picked up on it until now. And there's actually some kind of connections I'm making, like how people kind of naturally respond well to things that are familiar to them. I think that ties in really well, and I think that can also be used to justify like the overwhelmingly positive reactions we get. And then there's another aspect of it too, because there's a lot of validity in that statement in the way the program is run and like the way like Colin likes to write things, because he's always like, I like the 90s. I love the 90s. This has got to be like the 90s from the wrist. Because, you look at the way like he writes, like there's motifs in there from like the 90s, like the Star 93 throwback in there. There's, in Reds especially you can find it, but there's odes to the 92 UMass cadence. There's, I believe, 3 of them. But there's like crossover there. And then like even in the playing technique too, it's like lead with the beat and lead from the wrist. That's the 90s. Then there's like a lot of all this like this stuff that's like isolated eighth notes, like especially like his closer writing, you'll see a lot of that. But it's like, okay, this is all mechanical, like turn from the wrist, like things like stuff like that. Like that's like the 90s right there. And all this like kind of flam material. It's just like there's spins on it throughout the years, but there's like, again, there's that sense of familiarity to it. I had another example, and
when you bring up 90s drumming, I know George's wrist just start hurting.
playing all of that like wrist only.
It was wrist. That was very wrist only.
But I mean, that's a really great connection. Like now we're at a point where there are so many basically generations of this activity, all still engaged with it. Like, people from the 80s, people from the 70s, from the 80s, from the 90s, 2000s, 10s, and this current generation. And it's like, there's a little bit of like a, my version of it, like the version that existed when I was around, like you hold a special place in your heart for it. And so Colin having that, and then basically saying, I'm going to take that and I'm going to make it relevant for today. I'm going to make it be able to exist today, and sort of bridging those two things, right? Rather than just relegating it to the past, rather than just saying that's outdated, I really like that. I mean, that probably is why so many people, like especially of our generation, find Boston compelling and really, again, validating, right?
Yeah, and then too, you like not Colin writing, but the Brian Perez writing, that tag at the end of Spanx, all the little Easter egg throwbacks to all the SEV stuff from the 2000s. It's cool, and you just sit there and you try to, okay, that's from this, that's from this, that's from this.
Yeah, there's countless of them, but yeah, I remember at one of the camps, Perez was telling us, he was like, do you guys recognize this one? Do you guys recognize this one? And there were some that we were able to catch up on. And then actually this one was the one that literally nobody knew where it was from. But the part where we have like the impacts, the snares and basses have like all that stuff. And he was like, do you guys know what that is? And we were all like, no. Like, he was asking the snare line. We were like, no, what is it? He was like, and it was actually the SOS motif from 18, It was taken from that. I was like, oh, like, I never would have recognized that. And then I actually go back and I'll look at these old Vanguard things, like the Krakus lick, like that little like backstick, like ride cymbal 3 thing. I went back and I was like, oh, that's like Krakus. And I'm like, wait, there's more from Krakus in here. Like the end of Spanx is Krakus. And then it inspired me to go learn Krakus. It's just like all these little cool things.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. I was going to say, it's funny as a content creator when you post a video and you see everybody calling out the little throwback. Oh, that's this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and that's, it's sort of like going back to what I said before, that sort of cross-generational, love.
Yeah. That's
being expressed, like it's randomly, I'm going to bring this up, but like, this performer, Evan, who was in the tenor line at RCC and Blue Stars, not many people know he has like all of the an archive. He has like a museum of like all the videotapes of all the broadcasts from before he was born.
He's
like from
very hardcore
from our era, and he'll proudly wear like a Bridgman T-shirt or something like that to rehearsal. I think again, like I said before, all of this is like super refreshing, and heartwarming, versus the why do you guys play this way now, or why is this happening now? And it was so much better back then, or again, like maybe the current generation looking back on all that going like, that's outdated, like why would you ever play like that kind of thing. Let me ask you this. I think you mentioned it. I think you've mentioned it briefly in other conversations. Do you teach?
Yeah, I do.
Where do you teach?
So I teach at Old Bridge. I'm mainly with them during the indoor season because it kind of works out with winter break and everything like that. And I also teach private lessons on my own.
What is that like? Because I think it's funny because I give lessons. It's usually more like around like audition time and stuff like that. And it'll be funny. It's like but it's mostly performers for independent groups. So it's people out of high school. And they'll say, oh yeah, hey, sorry, I'm late. I was giving a lesson. So it's like they're coming out of giving a lesson, going into taking a lesson. In my mind, there's a lot of, to me, what's really interesting is what that does to your brain, right? Of having to go from being a performer to having to teach. Like that's something I feel like those pathways that are being sort of opened and worked are really healthy, for you as a performer. What's it like for you as an instructor?
Yeah, so I'll speak to two things, I guess, that come to mind when I get asked this question. My first thing is perspective, and then my second thing is there's an inspirational aspect of it too. So I'm going to speak on perspective first because you were just talking about it a little bit, and I think that's a really notable point of teaching. Jerry at Old Bridge used to say to me when I was marching in the line, and he still kind of tells this to the drum line, but he says to the students, he's like, you guys got to be the student and the teacher, and you have to fulfill that role. It's like, when you guys are learning the music, how would you teach this? And like, it helps the students gain much more of an understanding of what they're playing, and it kind of forces them to think a little bit more critically about what they're doing, as opposed to kind of just being robots, like, yes, I'm being told what to do. And it's like, also there's like a mutual perspective to it too. It's like, being a teacher and a student, because I'm teaching Old Bridge, but I'm still in the UMass drumline. I'm a member at Boston. Like, while I've been also teaching private lessons, it's like, I'm kind of understanding like things that happen on both sides. It's like, I can empathize with my instructors more. I can empathize with my students more, because I'm kind of fulfilling those roles at the same time. So it's a really helpful perspective tool. And then kind of the second aspect of that is it's inspiring. Like, it's really cool, like, especially with like students who've been with me on a consistent basis for like months at a time. It's just like so inspiring seeing their progress from lesson to lesson, month to month, and then they go on and like march drum corps or something, or they make their high school line. Like, it's always so cool just seeing those things, and it's really inspiring to me, and it's what keeps me going, what keeps me getting better at this thing too.
That's awesome. That actually just reminds me of another question I wanted to ask you. I touched on it a little bit at the beginning, but because I was talking to a student about this, the way things currently stand, it's really noticeable when there are women in the battery, because the percentages are off, right? So hopefully, we can get to a point where it's not so noticeable, where you just see members, right, versus gender. But there is a positive side to that, in that, and sort of how we get to that next place is there are young girls seeing you, right? In your time on tour, going from city to city and all of that stuff, have you had any experience with younger people, or maybe even just with your own students, of like you seeing that sort of like it's meaningful to them that they see you
being an inspiration for other young ladies out there?
Like, they're seeing that it's possible. Has that happened to you at all over the past couple of seasons?
Yeah, and it's also cool because I've seen a lot more women kind of emerge into drumline, for like, especially last year. Like, I have a lot more women as private student lessons now. I've started encountering more like young women who are fans over tour. And it's been really inspiring to me, and it's it even holds like a little like more of a special place in my heart, because I didn't see that a lot when I was watching drumline often. Like, I didn't see that female center snare. I mean, I think the only I think the first, and if not the only, was the center of Vanguard 08, and I think 07 she was the center as well. But I was like, oh, I want to be like her. She can do it. And like, seeing like that women can be in this role and can be good at it and can be in charge of good drum lines, it's something that inspired me. And it's really cool to fill those shoes of like who I looked up to when I first started, and like the fact that I get to be that person for someone just means a lot to me.
We were talking about 2022 earlier. Now we're going into the 2023 season with like the crowds and stuff. How they were in 2022, was there a lot of pressure on you guys going into this last season, like to take it to the next level, or at least sustain what you guys had done in 2022?
Oh yeah, I heard it a lot from like our newer guys too. They were like, you guys like made a statement in 22, like we want to build off of that. Which it's like, it's great having that motivation and like acknowledging that for sure. But the way I kind of handled that thing was I kind of told everyone, I was like, I don't care what happened last year. I don't care like what we did as veterans and what you did from like marching at some other corps. Like, all that matters is this year and making this year great. It doesn't, yeah, we want to obviously ideally build on that trajectory, but we shouldn't really put any kind of energy towards that. I don't think, like, you know, I don't want to hear so much of like last year this year that, like, whatever. It's like, no, we got to focus on what we can do and what we can control and how we can make this year great, because that's really what this is at the end of the day. It's for yourself, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's something that the staff really emphasizes with you guys, right? Like as far as being focused on the right thing, you know, like from the outside, sometimes you think, oh, you know, in order to win, you need to be focused on winning, right? Like that's like a little bit of an assumption that people who haven't done it, gone through it, that they would have, versus like, okay, given this opportunity, what do we need to focus on? How do we need to approach this in order to create this result that is going to be a byproduct of this other focus that we have? I imagine your staff has been really good about making sure that your heads are in the right places, you know, and all of that other stuff is going to be created sort of out of that. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's a totally fair point, because I feel like when you're focused on winning too much and you kind of hyperfixate on it way too much, that's like how to not win 101. And it can lead you down to failure because you're not really anticipating the result you don't want.
Right.
So this next question I'm going to ask, I want to preface this with saying it doesn't matter to me. It didn't matter to me whatsoever, but I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't ask and get your point of view as a member. The uniforms.
Mm-hmm.
When they busted those out for you guys, did it like... I mean, you come from an era where it's kind of the norm in like the indoor era, but like for drum corps, it's kind of out there. And the hats, did you call them hats or shake? Did you guys have a term for those?
We called them Apollos.
Apollos. Oh, okay. That's interesting. Was there any like blowback on those when they showed you guys what you'd be wearing, or you guys had to put them on?
There was. I would be totally lying through my teeth. The real honest answer is there was a lot of mixed responses. Personally, me, I was like, I'm not a fan of this when I first saw it, when they first released it at April Camp. And then I tried it on for the first time, and like we did our first show. I was like, you know, these are kind of growing on me because they're effective. And like watching like the full show for the first time with the uniforms on, I was like, okay, like this design makes sense. You know, like it just makes sense.
I remember, I mean, it actually reminds me, I mean, Robert, you know this story, but so a long, long time ago in the 90s, I marched Blue Devils, and I marched 2 years of like the old uniform that everybody sort of knew and loved, and then the 2 first years of the sort of new, like the big change, right, where all of a sudden, and I will tell you, and because back then, what were we going to say?
I was going to say, was there just some balloons that went over the screen? Yeah. Where did that come from?
Yeah, what is that? I don't know. Maybe it's because I said something.
I don't know. That's weird.
That's interesting.
Sorry
really weird.
For everybody that's watching. We're like, I'm looking at our Zoom screen and there was like some balloons.
It's because Zoom knows that I'm about to talk about Blue Devils 94.
It's because you know why? Because Zoom hated the uniforms back then too. Before George goes on, let me tell you this: the Blue Devils had this distinct look to them.
Yeah.
It
was back when like, you know, corps, like they look the same every year, right?
From pretty much the late 70s through 1993, they had this distinct look, and that was like the look that people wanted to have.
And it created this thing of so when you
the super suit
and a bunch of corps had this, right, where you went there to wear the thing that was very identifiable, right? So when they told us, you know, you're not going to wear that uniform anymore, you're going to wear this uniform. And other sort of changes about that, all these sort of like bigger changes that were happening to the identity of the corps, there was a lot of very open negative reaction to it. But here was the big lesson.
Even from the members, there was a lot of like...
No, especially from the members. Especially from the members. But the big, like my big sort of takeaway from that experience was... it's one thing to sort of wear and sort of be able to wear the thing that so many inspirational groups had gotten to wear before you. It's another thing to take this take this sort of blank slate, this sort of this costume, this uniform that you're going to put on and fill it and help define it, right? So we were really successful that year. And so now all of a sudden, instead of it just being like a different look, it was a look that was tied to a bunch of other things that were really positive, you know?
And I'll be the first to say, I think for that show, the 94 Blue Devil show, had it been with the old uniform, I don't think it would have been as effective as it was with the new.
I mean, sometimes, it's...
With the new BOA uniforms you guys wore.
Sometimes, this is what I'll say, is sometimes, like, I think of, like, Blue Knights when, like, Mike Jackson went there, right? Sometimes a group needs that sort of palate cleanser of, like, here's what our identity is going to be, because maybe their identity up until that point sort of not limited them, but they wanted to turn the page and have a little more freedom with, like, here's what it's going to be moving forward. But what's important, like with you guys, right, is you guys filled that uniform, right, what you guys were wearing, with a lot of really great performing. You know, so now those two things cannot be separated from each other, you know? And maybe that there are some young people that are like, I hope, funny enough, I get to wear something like that. You know, I want to go to Boston. I want to play those beats. I want to wear that thing. You know, I want to act the way they act. I want to do all the little things that they do in the lot, like all of it. You know, I want to do all of that.
My last question about the uniforms, because I know you always see the comments, and I'm good for deleting the majority of them that come across.
Best. Yeah.
But as a member, I don't know, maybe you can't answer this. Was there blowback from the alumni when they saw those?
Actually, not that I know of. Typically, our alumni are extremely supportive. The overwhelming amount of alumni support we get through the years, that's just positive. It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I actually experienced that because I went to your concert this year in downtown Boston, and you're just surrounded by alumni, you know, and you really get to feel like exactly what you're talking about.
George, you saw Boston so much this year. I'm surprised you don't have like all kinds of Boston Crusaders t-shirts and everything else.
I know I should.
I know. Honorary member or something, you know, you're there.
Robert, I can't believe you're asking so many provocative questions this late in the interview. You're really like pushing the needle. Anything else we need to talk about? Jovanna, anything else you want to talk about with regards to, like, you know, I don't know, what it's been like for you? Anything that we haven't covered that, you know, over your entire time so far that has been especially, like, meaningful or anything like that?
No, other than I will say I am extremely grateful for everything that drum corps has given me and this awesome community of people that it's introduced me to. Yeah, and anyone who's struggling out there, like, if you're auditioning, just keep your head up, trust yourself, use your resources, all the good stuff. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But I just also want to say, like, I appreciate what you guys do so much, and it's important to have, like, these discussions in the drum corps community, and, like, all the footage you guys are getting is just so important, because I remember, like, I was missing, like, I always wanted to watch videos when I was younger, like, before I started marching drum corps. I always wanted to watch those videos where it's like, I want to see what a rehearsal is like at XYZ drum corps, and you guys have been providing that to the fans, and I think that's incredible, and it's more of the content we need. And yeah, I appreciate it, like, getting, you know, all these interviews, like, getting to know the performers and the staff members on, like, a more personal level. Like, it's really awesome. So thank you for having me on, and just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, one last thing for me before we go. I just wanted to ask, you mentioned a little bit earlier about tips for audition. What other tips for people that want to audition or are on the fence about maybe going just to an experience an audition? What tips can you give for them?
And I will just say, any insight into Boston specifically?
Yeah. So yes to both. So if you're someone who's on the verge of auditioning, I say just go and do it anyway. Just take a risk on yourself because you never know what's going to happen and you can't control what's going to happen. What you can control is what you can do. And also use it as a way to like learn how to become the best version of yourself, you know, like the best player, the best person, the most confident person. Like it's a learning journey as well. And even just attending a camp without the intention of like wanting to move forward with it or anything, or if you don't really want to march drum corps but you still want to like experience playing in a line and you know experience, you know, you can learn from so much from just being there, from the staff. You can learn so much about that program and how they operate. So auditioning is a great thing, especially if it's like accessible. I know like nowadays it's like you got to buy plane tickets everywhere. So it's insanely hard, but even like just doing a video audition to expressing your interest, like that can get you very, very far. As for the way like Boston kind of does things, it's very typical. It's a lot of line playing. They typically like fairly rotate the auditionees on the instruments, which I think is pretty cool. You obviously have like your individual with Colin and whatnot, and he's gonna go absolutely insane in there, and it's gonna be like it's a lot of fun. It's definitely a high emphasis on like more reps, more drumming, to get like again for like the members to kind of just get that, and auditionees to get that experience of playing in the line without too much like explaining and whatnot. Yeah, I think I hit on everything. Yeah, I think I'm all good.
No, I just want to take the time and say thank you for coming on the podcast. And you know, it's been great watching you perform the last few years. The chances I've got to see you guys in person, and even like the videos I gotta watch. It's like just a great experience, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a, you know, I'm sure it's been great going through it. These past several seasons are going to keep giving to you as you continue on in life, and you know, in ways that we know from like having marched decades ago. You know,
why do you gotta say it like that?
Yeah, we're old.
Yeah.
But the thank you so much for being open. You know, and being open to all of our questions and with sharing your experience, because like you said, that's one of the things that I really love about being able to get to do this, is being able to get that insight, and I hope that our audience appreciates it also. So thank you for not just what you do as a performer, but for doing this interview and all of it.
Yeah. Well, we're at the point now where it's wrap-up time. I want to thank everybody also for just tuning in and listening and checking out the podcast. Smash the no, I'm not going to say smash the subscribe button, but hey, leave us a comment. As always, leave us a comment or a like or something. You know, I can't believe I just said that. But yeah, leave us a comment. Let us know what you think, and hopefully everyone's enjoyed these podcasts that we've been putting out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time. Thanks, Jovanna.
Yeah, thank you, Jovanna.
Thank you.
We'll see everybody next time on here in the shop. Take care.